Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this Wednesday afternoon. And my bad for starting out a little bit late. I had to run over to use the bathroom, and then I ran into some audio problems, so I had to fix a little bit of that. And not only that, I've recently been very, very sad because none of my picks, only one of my picks from yesterday ended up being right in terms of like which teams ended up winning in the playoffs. So might as well go ahead and talk about that. In the first segment, we're going to talk about the Knicks and how they disappointed me and how they disappointed everybody in those seats yesterday night after they blew it in regulation, and then they ended up losing in overtime. It was really bad. I have a lot to say about that game. And then there's also the Pacers game against the Bucks, and the Bucks became the first team to win a playoff game without having the two best scorers on the team because Dame and Giannis were both injured. So the Pacers definitely blew that one. And then we're also going to talk about the Cavs being able to win being able to win Game 5 and expecting to play Game 6 in Orlando in an elimination game. So we also have a fourth segment, so stay tuned for that. But hiccups, Jesus Christ. Before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is gsmcspodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcspodcast.net. And with that, with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and talk about the Knicks and how they disappointed me in Game 5. So this was an elimination game. The Knicks had the perfect opportunity to close out the series and win at home, so that way they don't have to play Game 6 over in Philly. And Jalen Brunson, this game ended up going into overtime due to the heroics of Tyrese Maxey. Now, surprisingly for the Sixers, Joel Embiid was locked up. I mean, I say he was locked up even though he ended the game with a triple-double. He had 19 points, 16 rebounds, and 10 assists. But, when you're Joel Embiid and you're held to 19 points on 19 shots, that's considered really good defense on a very elite player like him. And later down the stretch in the fourth quarter, it wasn't really him that was doing much for the Sixers. It was actually Tyrese Maxey. So Maxey was the one who was carrying the MVP in air quotes over there, and it was very annoying because he was hitting clutch shot after clutch shot for the 76ers. Meanwhile, Joel Embiid was the one that was missing, and it was like we were dealing with the big problem, which was Joel Embiid. Now there was another problem in dealing with Tyrese, and he ended the game with 46 points. And he shot 17 for 30 from the field. And late in the game, when I thought the game was over and the Knicks were up by about 7 points, I want to say, then Tyrese Maxey came down the other end and he got fouled on a three-pointer. He made the three-pointer. Then he made the free throw. Then the Knicks missed a shot. And then he comes down the court and hits a shot from the logo to tie the game. And then the Knicks miss a shot, and then the game goes into overtime. And everyone in the room is fuming because I thought that the game was over, but then everyone was like, wait, no, the game's not over. And then I said, oh my God, now that you say that, something is going to happen. And then the second that happens, the second I say that, then Maxey hits a ridiculous 3. And then I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I mean, when you watch the Knicks in the playoffs, it's like you're used to this happening like all the time, and it's like the game is never over with the Knicks because it's like no lead is unbreakable. No lead is unbeatable. Like any team can come back against the Knicks at any moment because Reggie Miller and the moment that he had when he was going up against the Knicks, scoring those, I believe it was 8 points in 9 seconds. It haunts New York. And not only that, just every team will have that one player that wants to show out in the Garden on the biggest stage. And they, like I said previously on previous podcasts, they set their calendars to do that. Like, specifically, they set their calendars to do that. And today was Maxey's day to just put on a show at the Garden, and it was great basketball coming from him. And what really got me upset was how the Knicks offense was responding to Tyrese Maxey and his it looked like the game was over, but then they just couldn't. For some reason, they just weren't protecting the ball long enough, and they weren't hitting the shots that they needed to hit later on down the stretch. They were hitting them with about 2 minutes and a minute left, but then directly after that, then Maxey decided to make his comeback, and it was just like, okay, what happened? And then the game goes into overtime, and the offense in overtime was strictly give Jalen Brunson the ball, and that it just wasn't really working all too well because Brunson would hold on to the ball for roughly I'd say maybe 15 seconds. Then he'd try to do something, he'd get stuck, then he'd have to pass the ball, then there's only 4 seconds left, and there's really nothing that the team can do when you're when your best player is trying to generate some kind of offense and he can't generate that kind of offense. And it was really annoying to watch because they were just giving it to Jalen Brunson, and they weren't really running anything like what they were doing in the first few quarters where they were actually running plays and they were looking like a team that knew how to run an offense. And DiVincenzo, he was relatively bad in this game. He shot 3 of 10 from the field for 9 points and 1 for 7 from 3. Josh Hart shot 3 for 17 from the field with 18. He shot 7 of 17 from the field, with 18 points, and he ended with 9 rebounds. He played 53 minutes. OG Anunoby played 50 minutes and ended with 17 points, and he shot 7 of 12. And Miles McBride ended the game with 14 points in 33 minutes. I'm sorry, but if you play, and Jalen Brunson, he also played 51 minutes. But if you play that many minutes and you're OG Anunoby, I expect a little bit more production coming in. Even though I understand his main deal is to play defense, but especially Josh Hart, I expect a bit more production coming in from him on the offensive side of the ball, or at least everywhere else on the in the offense, at least more rebounds or maybe more assists. I expect him to do a little bit more given that he played 53 minutes and he didn't sit out. Now, with Joel Embiid, he played really bad in this game, and this should have been the game that the Knicks ended up winning. But unfortunately, Maxey just decided to completely end the Knicks' hopes of winning. So now they're expected to play the in Philly in I believe in on Friday, I believe they're expected to play. On Friday they're expected to play at 9 in Philly. So we'll see just how well the Knicks decide to perform on that day. And it's still going to be an elimination game, and hopefully the Knicks will end up winning this game. But if I didn't say the final score, it was 112 to 106 in overtime. It was a really bad matchup because, the Knicks, they only had 9 points in OT, and Philly ended up getting 15 points in overtime, and it was a really bad performance overall. And the Knicks had, they did have a lead going into the, they didn't really have that much of a lead, but they did have a considerable advantage going into the half. And then not only that, to close out the game was really, really close. And not really close, but the game was basically over with a 7-point lead, and all they had to do was just not allow anyone to hit any shot and don't foul. But of course they had to foul a shooter, and he luckily was able to. It was a crazy 3-pointer, and it was a lucky shot, but he ended up making it, so that's what costed them the game. And obviously when it comes down to that, it's really, really annoying. But now the series is expected to go over to Philly, and Philly is expected to, I'm not entirely sure if they're going to win that game. They are favorites for this game, given how they do have home court advantage. But regardless, no guarantee on who will win. And especially, I'm done picking, who I think's going to win this series. Because it seems like every single time that I pick, my pick ends up being wrong. Because I picked the Knicks to come out of this series and win in Game 5, but they ended up losing. And then I also picked the Pacers to come out in Game 5, and now they also end up losing. And speaking of the Pacers, that is going to be my second segment, and I think that's really all I have to talk about in That's really all I have to talk about in this first segment, because there's not really much that needs to be said. I mean, I saw the game. I saw what I needed to see. It was just a ridiculous performance coming in from Maxey, and now the game is just going to be that's just more playoff games for me to review, I guess, because we can't really, the second round can't start until most of the first round ends, and unless it's a Game 7, if there's any series that ends up going to 7 games, then the rest of the second round is going to be played, but only because it's there wasn't really much time, and they've already had enough time to rest. So the next the semifinal round, Jesus, can I speak? The conference semifinal round is going to start on Saturday, on May the 4th, but depending on it's obviously dependent on whether or not there is going to be and that's going to be the only game of the conference semifinal rounds, but that's all dependent on whether or not there's going to be a Game 7 for the Maverick series or the Magic series or the Celtic series. So that's basically how the playoffs are going to be looking like. But we still have to see how these are going to unfold. Right now in this next segment, I'm going to talk about the next step for the Pacers, and after this ridiculous loss to the Milwaukee Bucks. So I will be right back after this short break.
feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in the second segment, we are going to be talking about the Pacers and their ridiculous loss to the Milwaukee Bucks. Before I begin, though, I'd like to remind everybody to please go ahead and use the link in the description or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment to tip and to donate to get your comments recognized. The link is gsmcspodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. And with that out of the way, we can dive right in and talk about this Pacers game when they, as they matched up against the Milwaukee Bucks. So, no Dame, no Giannis. This was supposed to be an extremely winnable game for the Pacers, but it ended up being a Bucks blowout. They ended up winning 115-92. And they had several players end up scoring double digits, and a lot of players filled up the stat sheet for the Milwaukee Bucks. This is the first team in NBA history to ever win a playoff game without two of the team's best scorers. And that's obviously, really impressive, and that's obviously, really bad if you're Indiana, because here was your chance to close out the series. Obviously, they didn't play at home, so they do have a much better chance to close out the series since Game 6 is going to be in Indiana. But other than that, this was a really embarrassing way to go out. Chris Middleton ended the game with 29 points and 12 rebounds. Bobby Portis ended the game with 29 points and 10 rebounds. Patrick Beverley ended with 13 points and 12 assists. Brook Lopez ended with 12 points. Malik Beasley ended the game with 18 points. And let me just go ahead and look at the bench real quick. Yeah, that was basically it in terms of scoring for the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, obviously, this kind of just goes back to what I've been saying about the Pacers and their defense, and their lack of wanting to play defense in key moments of the game. Because throughout the game, when I was watching, there were several easy wide open looks that the Pacers were giving the Bucks players, and a lot of them, again, they didn't really shoot that well from three, the Milwaukee Bucks, but the Pacers, they didn't really shoot that well from three either. they did make more threes than the Bucks, but they did not shoot that well from the field, and they also did not shoot that well from three. And the fact that they were giving the Bucks a lot of easy shots and a lot of opportunities to score while they weren't scoring, it was really just like a bad defensive effort coming in from the Pacers. Because if you're not going to score, or if you're not able to score, you should at least be able to stop the other team from scoring a lot of points and going on big runs. Like in the second quarter, so the Pacers in the first quarter, they were up 31-23, like to end the first quarter. So at first, I thought this was going to be easy for Indiana. But then they only scored 17 points in the second quarter, while the Bucks scored 30. Then the Bucks scored 34 to open up the second half, and the Pacers only scored 19. And by the time that happened, the game was never close. And the fourth quarter, they ended up almost matching. So the Bucks scored 28 and the Pacers scored 25. So the game wasn't really close after the second half. Well, not the second half, but after the second quarter, the game was never really close. And it's like, how does this happen? And it's really just like, I mean, I know how this happened, but it's like when you have that kind of momentum and you win like 3 games in a row, your offense is usually like supposed to carry into the next few games, and you're not really supposed to drop the next game after you win 3 in a row. But that's unfortunately what ended up happening for the Pacers, and I was really surprised. Even though the Bucks were the home team, I was really surprised that the Pacers ended up dropping this game, and they were just playing really bad. And Halliburton ended the game with 16 points, so he's far from the player that a lot of people thought he was. He was 6 for 14 from the field. Miles Turner ended the game with 13 points. He was 6 of 9 from the field. Siakam ended with 12 points, 5 of 12 from the field. He really slowed down in in the latter of these playoff games compared to in the beginning of the playoff series where he was like dropping 30 points. He's really like he hasn't had that same production going into these games. Now, TJ McConnell, he ended the game 3 of 10 from the field, and Aaron Nesmith ended the game 3 of 9 from the field. Obi Toppin ended 3 of 7 from the field, and there's just a lot of people that were just shooting very inefficiently for the Pacers, and a lot more people shooting a little bit more efficiently on the Bucks side. I mean, Bobby Portis in that 14 of 24. I mean, that was okay. I mean, he ended up he only ended up scoring 5 more points than shot attempts, but he barely took that many threes. So, it makes sense, and it's not really, especially like when you have Chris Middleton, who's also playing really well and scoring 29 points. It's really difficult to beat that, and the team did not shoot that well from 3. Again, 11 for 29 from 3. That's not really that good. That's decent, but it's not like really good for a team. But it ended up resulting in them getting the win. But now they're looking to play Indiana in Indiana in Game 6, and I'm not going to pick who I think is going to win, because again, I did that last time and I ended up being horribly wrong on the last 2 teams that I mentioned, because like I said, I thought the Knicks were going to make it out, but they ended up not making it out. Well, they're still playing in their series. I thought the Knicks were going to end their series in 5 games, but that ended up not happening. And now I thought the Pacers were going to end their series in 5 games, but that's not happening. But the Pacers, they do have a bit of a better chance of beating the Bucks now and closing out the series than I think the Knicks do in closing out the 76ers, because the Sixers, they still have their two best players playing in the series. They are going into the next game coming off of stealing a game and having home court advantage. And not only that, but Tyrese Maxey has been playing a lot better in the postseason games. And Joel Embiid, I mean, he hasn't really been playing that good, but I mean, he's been solid for the Sixers, even though he has come off of an injury. So compared to the situation that the Pacers are in, where they're going into the elimination game with home court advantage, the Bucks, while they did win one game, they still don't have Damian Lillard or Giannis Antetokounmpo. And the Pacers, with that home field advantage and the fact that none of the players have been injured, they have a lot of the momentum going forward. Now, the one thing that could sort of hold them back, I guess, is that embarrassing loss, but I'm not entirely sure if that team is going to take it that personally. I think they're just they'll take it with a grain of salt, and then they'll continue their merry way, and they'll continue strutting along into the postseason. And I mean, the thought is that they're going to end up playing in the second round against the Boston Celtics. And I feel like that's when, I mean, the Celtics right now, they're sort of struggling. Well, not really struggling against the Heat because they are up 3-1, but they did surprisingly lose Game 2, which was the big surprise of that series, and the only reason why I say that they're struggling against the Heat, because, and it's kind of funny saying that a team that is looking to beat them in 5 games is struggling against, and that just shows just how dominant of a team the Boston Celtics really are. But I feel like the Pacers, they might be a little bit easier on the defensive side of the ball. They'll be a lot easier to score on for the Celtics. The Celtics will have a much easier time scoring on these Pacers than they will, because the Miami Heat, they're a team that's had a lot of pride in their defense for a while, and this Pacers team has a lot of pride in the pace of their offense. And I feel like the Celtics are basically going to match to that pacing because they shoot a lot of three-pointers. And so when the Pacers will shoot, the Pacers will run down the floor rather quickly, and then the Celtics will also run down the floor rather quickly. And I feel like it's just going to be three-pointer after three-pointer after three-pointer. That's sort of the team that the Celtics are. They rely on the three-pointer a lot. So I feel like this series is going to be the series against them is going to be very fast-paced. But we still have to get through Game 6, which is going to happen tomorrow, for both the Knicks and the Pacers. So I think the Pacers, they have a better chance of winning in Game 6, but we'll see how the series plays out, and we'll see how it goes. But hopefully the Knicks can close the series out, actually. And that's basically all I have to say for this second segment. So now we will go ahead and go into the third segment, where I will talk about the Cavs and the Orlando Magic and their matchup in Game 5. Now with the Cavs leading in the series 3-2. So I will be right back after this short break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be looking at the Cavs and their series against the Orlando Magic as they go up 3-2. Now, if you remember previously, I said that the Cavs, they have been unable to score over 100 points in any of these playoff games. So this is the first time that they scored over 100 points, and they win. So they did have home court advantage in this game. The final score was 104-103, and they did get saved with a very huge play from, I believe it was Evan Mobley, who got the game-sealing block towards the end to sort of put the game away and make sure that the Magic can't come back. And unfortunately, what makes it even worse is Banchero. He ended up making a three towards the end of the game, which is like why the final score is like, which is why they're up by 1 point. So they were down by one, and if they only had if they had missed one free throw, then they probably would have tied it and the game would have gone into overtime. Or if Evan Mobley didn't get that block, which is really like the play that sort of saved Cleveland from losing that game. If Evan Mobley did not get that block, then it completely changed the game. That block, like, it was a very clutch block. It was one of the most clutch blocks that the Cavs have had in a long time. And obviously, like, the last clutch block that the Cavs have had in recent memory was J.R. Smith blocking LeBron from winning Game 1. I'm just playing, but was LeBron James blocking Andre Iguodala on the chase down in Game 6. And speaking of LeBron, there is a possibility that there's a lot of growing debate now on whether or not he's going to sign with the Lakers again, or whether or not he's going to go to a different team and decide to be a free agent for the first time since 2018. And if I remember the report correctly, LeBron was unsure exactly of like what his status is, like not just like on the Lakers, but also like in the NBA as a whole. He has no idea whether or not he's going to like retire sooner or he's going to retire later. But I do have a feeling that LeBron might test the free agency market and see what teams would want him to join their roster if the Cavs end up losing, or if they end up playing rather well but underperform. Like, let's say maybe they lose in the second round. Maybe LeBron wants to go back to Cleveland and play his final years there. That would be a pretty cool way to go out. But I do think that this that the decision on whether or not to explore free agency is also going to be influenced on the decision of Bronny James and whether or not a team picks him up for the draft, whether or not he decides to go to college for one more year. And I feel like depending on whether he decides to, if he enters the transfer portal, then LeBron might go ahead and sign with a team that's relatively close to that college, or if he does get drafted, then LeBron decides to sign with the team that drafts Bronny James. So there's that possibility of and I feel like that might also have like a little bit of an influence as to why, or like where LeBron could go and things of that nature, and what the Cavs might do if that does happen. Again, that's a big if. We have no idea. So, but just fruit for thought. And with the Magic going down in the series 3-2, they are forced to play 2 elimination games at most. So they have to play. They play the next one in their home court, and if the trend keeps going the way that it's going, then the Orlando Magic should expect to win in Game 6, because so far it seems that every single team that, or at least in this series, it seems like whichever team has the home court advantage is the team that's going to end up winning in the end. And this is also, like, I wanted to point out, this was the first game that actually did not end in a blowout, and it was really close. So the games are getting a lot closer now that the series is getting a little bit tighter, and now that it's going to 6 games, we're going to see if the Orlando Magic can, or if they have what it takes to win in this series. So I didn't really watch this game because I was watching the Knicks blow my heart out, and then I was watching the Pacers game, and like the little bit. And once I got bored of watching the Pacers game because I thought it was going to be a blowout, then the Cavs game basically ended, and I literally only got to watch like the final few seconds where I saw Evan Mobley get that block, and that was basically like the entirety of this game that I saw. But Paolo Banchero, he ended the game with 39 points and shot 14 of 24, from the field, and 4 of 7 from 3. Franz Wagner, he ended the game with 3 for 11 from the field and 14 points. Jalen Suggs ended 5 of 14 from the field with and was 0 for 5 from 3. So, like, Paolo Banchero was really, like, the only player really playing well in this game. And that was basically it for the scoring for the Orlando Magic. So, they just need, like, a few more people to help out in the scoring, and they would have ended up winning this game, no problem. If Franz Wagner didn't get blocked by Evan Mobley, then we would be looking at this completely different, and the game might be in overtime. Like, the game might have been sent to overtime with a completely different result, but that's not what ended up happening. The Cavs ended up being able to close out because they were able to actually get a stop. And this, honestly, it's literally like a parallel between like the team that was able to close out and the team that was able to close out getting a stop, and the team that wasn't able to get a stop to close out. And like the Knicks, they weren't able to get a stop to close out, but you know, the Cavs, they were able to, and it's like just a complete parallel. So Evan Mobley, he ended the game with 14 points, 13 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks, and 4 assists. Darius Garland ended the game with 23 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. Donovan Mitchell, he ended the game with 28 points and 6 rebounds. Max Strus ended the game with 16 points, and let me see real quick. Yeah, Marcus Morris, he ended up getting minutes for the Cavs in this game, and he ended up scoring 12 points. So obviously, this Cavs team, it was they played really well in this game, and they deserved this home win. And now they're going into Game 6. They're going into an elimination game in Game 6, looking to close out the series. And then once they close out the series, they're expected to play either between the Knicks or the Sixers. And the Cavs, they lost to the Knicks previously, and the Knicks have gotten, as a whole, they've gotten better. But now that they don't have Julius Randle, I'm a little bit worried about how they're going to match up against the Cavs, because this Cavs team, they have a lot more options to go to than what I saw the Knicks go to, at least in their previous series, at least in the previous game that they played. Because the Knicks, they sort of have that give it to one player offense and let that player just do whatever he can do. And that's really what they relied on. They relied on that for a majority of overtime, and it just didn't result in the win. And it got me really upset, because those guys, they really should have put more effort in trying to get the team involved, as opposed to just letting Jalen Brunson do everything, especially when they saw that he was struggling. Excuse me. But even talking about the Knicks is making me sick. But regardless, it was I really feel like that was just it was a bad move for the Knicks to do that and to just rely on that one player. And they should really, with the Cavs, you have several other players that you could rely on to sort of hit that shot late in the game. You have Mitchell, obviously. You also have Strus, who could hit it. You also have Darius Garland, who could take over the game at any given point. And it really is to me, at least, it was unfortunate that they were unable to close out that game. And for the Cavs, theoretically, the Knicks should have an easy time beating the Cavs if they do match up. But given how I also think that the Sixers should have been easy work, that sort of has not been the case. And I'm again, it should have been easy work by now, but that just hasn't been what's happening. And I'm a little bit hesitant to decide who I think is going to win these next few games, which is going to go into the fourth segment, which will be my playoff preview of the 2 games that are going to be going down tonight, which are going to be the Mavericks and the Clippers matching up against each other at 10, and the Boston Celtics matching up against the Miami Heat. So I basically, I don't have anything else that I need to talk about for, the first few teams that I just mentioned. So I might as well go ahead and, before I do the next segment, let me know what you guys think in the comments. What do you think LeBron James is going to do? Do you think he's going to stay on LA, or do you think he's going to test out the free agency and see what options he has? And do you think the Lakers are better off trying to keep LeBron, or do you think they're better off letting him walk and deciding what to do there? Or should they try to get players in the free agency to see, or to trade for a player to see if they can convince LeBron to stay on the Lakers for a little bit longer? What do you think what do you think are LeBron's best options? What do you think are the possible teams and the possible scenarios that you could see him go on? And, I mean, do you think he's going to use the Olympics as a means of being able to get close to some of the other players and decide to join their team in free agency? Because the Olympics are coming up, and there are going to be a lot of talented players that are going to be playing in the Olympics, and also going to be free agents sometime towards, or also are looking to win regular championships in the NBA, and they might want to say, hey, you could come over to this, or we could decide, or depending on if the player is a free agent, they could both sign to a certain team. But again, that's just food for thought. I'm not entirely sure what LeBron's moves are going to be coming up in free agency, if he even does decide to become a free agent. But regardless, we're going to go ahead and go into the fourth segment, where I talk about the Mavericks and the Clippers series and the Heat and the Celtics series, and who I think has the best chances of making it out. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to predict who's going to win. So if you guys could just go opposite and just pick the opposite of what I pick, and that's the team that's going to end up coming out. So I will be right back after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back to the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be talking about the playoff games that are going to be going down tonight, as there are some very good ones. I look forward to watching the Clippers and the Mavericks series, because that one is very, very competitive. Now, this is going to be Game 5, and it doesn't seem like Kawhi Leonard is going to be available for Game 5, as that's what the latest reports were saying. So, looks like it's going to be down to James Harden and Paul George yet again to try and sort of lift this Clippers team and win at home at Crypto Arena, because now the series gets taken over to LA in Game 5. And the series is tied right now, so it's 2-2 right now, and they play in LA. So who's going to win this game? Previously, with the picks that I've gotten, I've been wrong every single time. So don't necessarily take my word for my picks this time around, but I have the Clippers winning this matchup simply because they're at home. They do have the momentum of beating the Mavericks away, and while the Mavericks were at home, Kyrie, he did play very well in that game 4, and so did Luka. Luka could have played a little bit better, but I'm only saying that because Luka thought he himself could have played a little bit better, and that could play into the sort of dilemma and the action in Game 5, where it's like Luka got upset that he didn't play that well in the last game, and so now he just comes in and dominates the Clippers in this next game. But I do think that the Clippers, they have much more of an advantage, especially with the players that they have coming off of their bench, and the fact that their offense doesn't become stagnant when you don't give the ball to either James Harden or Paul George, because they do have other options, and they do have other players who could score, and other players who could play make, and other players who can create a shot, unlike the Dallas Mavericks, where they only have 2. And when you look at the Mavericks play, it's when Luka doesn't have the ball, or when Kyrie Irving doesn't have the ball, it's really hard to watch the offense that the team is able to generate, because it's what are you doing at this point? And obviously, if with that in mind, and we've seen how the Suns, they ended up losing they ended up getting swept because their players that had the ball in their hands 24/7, they weren't able to do much when it really mattered. So, and they were up against a team that had multiple players that were able to produce for the team, and multiple players that were able to exploit a lot of the weaknesses that they've had. So when a team is able to do that, while at the same time being able to slow down some of the offense of the team, because you only have to worry about 2 or 3 other players, then it just becomes an easy task. And I feel with that in mind, the game plan going into the game, the Clippers already know exactly what they have to do. They have to stop Luka, and they have to stop Kyrie. Obviously, it's easier said than done, because they're both really, really good. But if they could force them to having a relatively mediocre game, that ultimately gives them the edge. And they were able to win when they had Kyrie drop 40 points. And even they were up by 31 points and they almost blew it, but they ended up winning in the end. So with the heroics of James Harden, this is actually the first time that James Harden in the postseason, his numbers elevated, as opposed to in previous years where his numbers would go down in the postseason. This is the first time that that's happened. So this is obviously this is good. This is a good sign for the Clippers. Excuse me. The fact that James Harden is playing well in the postseason when you really need him, when he's usually he plays a little bit worse than what he usually does compared to the regular season. But that's all I have to say about that matchup right there for the Clippers against the Mavericks. Then the next matchup is the Heat going up against the Celtics. So this is an elimination game for the Boston Celtics. They lead the series 3-1 against the Miami Heat. So I guess it's more so an elimination game for the Miami Heat, because they're the ones that are getting eliminated in this playoff series. But it's still a very intense game for both teams. The Celtics, this now would be the best chance for them to close out, because they have the home court advantage. They recently stole both of the games that happened in Miami, so that just completely destroyed Miami's hopes of defending home court. And now the Celtics, they're a very, very good team when they play in home court. And it took a historic performance from the Miami Heat to even be able to win against the Boston Celtics. So I have confidence in the Celtics. But again, last time I picked the Celtics, the Miami Heat, they shocked me. So don't take my word for it in this time in the series, because it's like it doesn't really seem like any of my takes have been that good. Especially yesterday's takes, where I thought, like, you know, the Knicks, the Knicks were going into the last Game 5 with basically like the exact same scenario that the Boston Celtics are going into their Game 5, because they have the lead. They recently beat their opponent in an away game, and now they're going into Game 5 with all the advantage in the world to win. And it's literally like the exact same scenario, but it's like the Knicks, they ended up losing, so there's a slight chance that the Celtics could also end up losing. I hope that I end up being right, just for the sake of me being right, but I would prefer that the Celtics, I know that the Celtics are going to end up like winning this series simply because they just are the better team, but I do hope that the Knicks don't have to play them, because, like, you know, I have said that the Knicks, they do have the best chances of beating the Celtics in a series, but based on how the Knicks' offense has been in the playoffs, now I'm not entirely so sure. And I'm a little bit worried, but the Celtics, they do seem like the favorites to win out in these playoffs, and they do seem like probably the only real contender in the Eastern Conference. Like, I'd say the contenders right now, like the teams that are looking for a final spot, are between the Nuggets, the Celtics, the Timberwolves, and the Thunder, because the Nuggets, they are the defending champions, so they definitely have to be respected. The Celtics, they've had a lot of success, and they've been favorites for the finals for the longest time, and they also have the best regular season record. And on top of that, the Eastern Conference, like, the gap between them and the second seed in the Eastern Conference is much greater than the gap between the 1 seed and the 9th seed in the Western Conference. So that's a lot to take in and a lot to, like, sort of understand. And not only that, but the rest of the Timberwolves and the Thunder, they ended up sweeping in both of their series. So they're not ones to really mess around with. So that's like basically all the opinion. That's basically all I have to say, like, for this playoff preview. Again, I think the Celtics are going to win in Game 5, and I also think the Clippers are going to win in Game 5. So we'll see how the matchups go, but that's basically it, because we are out of time for this fourth segment, and that is it for the show. Thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram to get more content and updates. And once again, please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Excuse me. Really helps the show. Makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. That is it for the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn.